I just saw a tweet, Rich, that J.J. Watt put out. I don't know if it was today or it was a couple weeks ago.
Okay.
Or he said, why are there so many teams so willing to be so public and loud about the fact that they're out on Lamar Jackson? Why is that? He said, mid-20s player, MVP, prime of his career. Why are people so willing to say that they don't want him? Like teams. Like, why is that information getting out there? He goes, am I missing something? And when I read that in that context, just a few minutes before we came on air here, I was like, yeah. Like, why is that? Why does there seem to be this? And look, I'm not one for conspiracy theories, man. I don't get into that crap. But why does there seem to be like this weird willingness to be so open about the fact that we don't want Lamar Jackson, or we're not interested in Lamar Jackson? Why is that? That's just bizarre to me. This situation is very, very disappointing, and it's unfortunate. And I think that a lot of the disappointment arises out of the fact that we don't really have a lot of the facts. I mean, we really, for all intents and purposes, are only getting information from one side of this, through the avenues that information comes out, through the team side, and we're not getting really his story about it in a way that traditionally we get the player side via agents, as I talked about earlier. And we're left to kind of like try and put this whole thing together. Like, what's the gap? What's the divide? Like, what truly is the situation here as to why we can't arrive at, for lack of a better word, fair value? Because there's always the best deals in the NFL are the ones where the player feels as though he didn't necessarily get everything that he wants, but he's happy with it, he can live with it, and the team feels as though, look, we didn't necessarily get the best deal for us to minimize our risk, but we're happy with it because we love the player and we want the player. We can't even arrive at that.
Right.
I mean, we can't even arrive at that. Now the guy wants out of there. So what the hell is going on?
Well, if I could answer that to the best of my ability, Louis Riddick here on the Rich Eisen Show, is that the reason why teams were, if you will, more public than normal is because they had the entire, in the same way that you were pointing out, the reason why we don't know so much about Lamar's contractual situation is he doesn't have an agent, and the agents are the ones who call the terrific insiders in our business, who then report to all of us what they're hearing. That all those insiders went to every single team immediately, and so many of them were willing to respond on the spot. We're not interested in Lamar. And part of the reason why is twofold. One is that contract by Watson is so widely reviled that nobody wants to be the second one in. Certainly when that contract was given to somebody with 24 accusations of some of the most heinous behavior. Okay. And so they don't want to be the second one in. Because with this silly escrow rule, they got to cut some fat check on the spot. And then there's the other aspect that's going to, I think, count against Lamar to get somebody in on him at this stage of the season is you gotta change a lot of things around. And that's not because he's not equipped, right? It's because he is so equipped uniquely that you have to change things around. And you also then have to go to your team's owner and say, hey, you want to cut a $200 million check? What do you think? And I don't know if many general managers want to do that. And you put it all together. That's the way I'm reading that, Louis.
Let me hit those things that you said.
Please.
One, when it comes to the teams, Rich, could very easily, when people are asking them if they're interested, they don't have to say no. You could, if you were hypothetically interested, but you can't comment on it because he's not being represented by an agent. So you can't, you don't want to make any comment.
No, I know, but doesn't that immediately alienate whoever you've been telling for weeks? Where you're the guy. We can't wait to give you the opportunity. You're going to get the reps. Get ready. I mean, I understand Desmond Ridder is not a veteran who's You're afraid to alienate him, but
but all you have to say is we're not interested. Not interested. All you have to say is can't comment on players that are under contract to other teams.
Got it.
We're not going to comment on players on other teams at this point.
Mm-hmm.
Teams say it all the time.
Belichick did today.
On other teams' players.
Belichick did today when Lamar was brought up to him, and it was pointed out he's technically a free agent.
There you go.
Right.
See, that's what I'm saying. I'm not going to comment on other teams' players, and that leaves you all kinds of wiggle room. And that contract negotiators, general managers, owners, want wiggle room all the time.
Yep.
I didn't say I wasn't interested. I didn't say I was interested. I just said I can't comment, and I'm not going to comment. That's all they had to say. You don't have to come out and say no. You know what I mean? That was my only point. As far as changing around an offense for Lamar, if you go back to his tape during his time at Louisville, some of Lamar's best football was played in a pro style of offense when he was there. A true 3-5-7 step under center, shotgun mix, move him outside the pocket, the same kind of things that you see, the Rams play, that you see the 49ers play, that you see the Jets play. I mean, he was someone who can execute that kind of offense to the point where I don't feel as though it would be a situation where they would have to make wholesale changes in order to fit him in and upset, philosophically everything that they believe in at these places, like in particular that could potentially be interested. Like, let's just say a place like Washington. I don't think you need to do that. I don't think it needs to be a situation where you're upsetting the apple cart and starting over from scratch and having to remake the roster. As a matter of fact, I think, quite honestly, that's the kind of offense that Lamar would love to go into, to where he doesn't have to be a guy who's a primary ball carrier and someone who doesn't have to live out there on the perimeter taking shots all the time and run the zone read over and over and over again and quarterback powers over and over again, but could run a more traditional style offense. I mean, that's why they brought Todd Monken in there in the first place into Baltimore. They wanted to get away from that stuff. They want, because it's going to increase the efficiency of the offense in terms of its run and pass. Two, it's going to attract other players to want to come to this offense, especially at the wide receiver position, because they're going to say, hey, look, we're going to get more targets. We're going to get more balls thrown our way. It's going to be a more traditional passing offense on first and second down, in addition to third down. So, yeah, I'm more interested in coming there. And three, I think this is what Lamar wants anyway. I think this is something that he would say, look, this is going to add to my longevity and my availability in this league, and going to help me get to where I ultimately want to go, which is to a Super Bowl. So I quite honestly think I think that kind of reasoning would be more of an excuse for teams to throw out there to say as to why they're not interested in him. But I think it's really a reason why you would want to bring him in there, because he does want to be a part of this kind of structure, and he has flourished in it during his time at Louisville in college. So I disagree with that a little.
No, it makes, and that's part of the reason why I love chopping it up with you, Lewis. And so I guess then my follow up to that would be, if the Ravens, Harbaugh played the same music. I said he was one of the greatest frontmen since Mick Jagger, with what he's doing right now. Talking about they love him, and obviously you just said that they got an offensive coordinator in that can help everything out. And if the Ravens would love to have him back.
Right.
And so maybe he realizes that. I don't know, or he insists on getting traded. Catch the Rich Eisen Show every single day on the Roku channel, 12 to 3 Eastern, for free.